What is happening, everybody, man? Thank you guys tuning in to another episode of One Big Fire. And today is fire. And, I want to kind of kick things off because most people don't know the backstory of where the whole One Big Fire concept really was born and where it came from. And, just as I'm talking about it, even thinking about it, just kind of reflecting on, I can almost vividly feel what that room felt like and the view outside of it. And, where the conversation just unfolded. And it's those moments, right, that are just kind of magical that you kind of hang on to, forever. So I'm going to tee you up, cuz, and let you kind of share that story.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to do this politically correct. We've worked with a lot of different agents at a lot of different levels, right? And, the thing that we enjoyed the most was getting around people that made us think bigger, made us push harder, made us become more of what we were capable of. And we had a mastermind group that was that group. That was the people you wanted to be in the room with. And it was always so cool to think, man, how could we all work together? Wouldn't it be awesome if we could just put all our fires together and make one big fire, right? And thankfully, Glenn Sanford came up with a way for us to do that, because now we all get to work together, building one big fire together, as opposed to our little fires all over the place, and not being able to work with people at this kind of capacity and this kind of level. So, it's always fun working with all you guys and everybody we have at EXP and being able to think bigger, do bigger things, make a bigger ding in the universe along the way. And so that was the idea. I think if we hadn't had the idea, maybe we wouldn't have really understood it when we saw it. But when we saw it, we knew what we were seeing. This is how you do it, is right here at EXP.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember the day very clearly, and it segues great into our amazing guest that we have here today, Leo Pareja. Appreciate you coming on, brother. We kind of just like in echoing what Jay just said about the type of people, the type of thinkers, the people that think big, thought leaders. And that's who I felt we were, constantly trying to surround ourselves with. And this was 15 years ago, something like that. Mm-hmm. And what I will say is this: the journey that we've been on here since we've met Glenn, and that was 7 years ago. Yep. And I remember when Leo was brought onto the team. I believe it was the chief strategy officer, if I'm not mistaken. And we watched you start working your magic, and we're like, dang. And Jay and I were here last night, sort of a late night. We had to make an emergency trip to the vet for Snoop Dogg, who swallowed a bone that he wasn't supposed to. That's a whole nother story. But when we got back, we were like, we had a lot of time to reflect. Okay. And we were saying, dang, we're not here to blow wind up your skirt, Leo, but, really you breathed life into this company. I've never seen someone charge as hard as you have at taking a problem straight on and then just solving it. So we're just super grateful that your fire has been added to that big fire. And we appreciate you coming to Cleveland, in 2 days for our Agent to CEO event.
No, I appreciate the kind words. And I didn't have a long-standing relationship with all of you, but definitely with some of you. And I'd been in masterminds with Jay since I was in my 20s. And so, coming here in a way was coming home, right? There's lots of folks who were the early adopters and kind of advocates for this company. And most of them I grew up with, right? Their numbers were in my phone. And then now I've had the pleasure of adding the ones I didn't have in my phone. So in my head, I'm still a team leader, and I just now have the honor and privilege of leading a team of 87,000 people in 24 countries.
Yeah. Amazing.
Could you ever have thought, you know what I mean? Like, we were talking about this last night too. It's like, you started out as a team leader. Actually, you started out as a solo agent. Then you grew a team. Then you started a tech company, had a couple exits, and now you're leading the largest real estate company in North America right now. I mean,
on the planet.
Every time where you on
the planet, and not just North America, all the time.
Let's go.
All the time. I mean, it's a privilege. It's an honor. I don't take it lightly. And I just think we're just getting warmed up. That's where I get the goosebumps. We haven't even begun to do what I think we're capable of together.
Al, before you jump into kind of our first topic, we want to dive in and get Leo's perspective on, just kind of the state of, the season, real estate is in, right? And all of us have been able to ride through considerably some of the hardest markets that, almost anybody that's in real estate has ever seen. And it comes back to, one of our favorite reads. And I was thinking about this morning on my walk, and I just reflected back on The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And, with Ben Horowitz and the one distinction, right? Peacetime and wartime. And, the type of general that it takes inside of, whatever the climate and whatever the situation is. And, obviously, just you and I haven't had formally chance to meet, but just everything that I've heard and seen, especially coming from the guys, I was like, we got the wartime general that we need to be able to navigate the waters ahead. And, I would love just kind of maybe just a few minutes, because I know you're going to unpack a lot of this, from a leadership perspective at agent to CEO, but really from a leadership perspective, as you take the reins and look at the climate and, kind of what is the mindset coming from you to navigate, the waters that we're in and the waters ahead. So
that moniker is very personal to me. And I think it's because of when, first of all, I attribute a good portion of my journey to luck. I think anyone who doesn't, luck, grace, whatever word you want to use, the universe, because so much of what we experience, you can't control. But I do prescribe to the theory that, life is 10% what happens and 90% how you choose to react to it. And the financial crisis was kind of that grow up moment for me. So yesterday I recorded a masterclass on the DISC profile that we're going to share with everybody. And that was my DISC changed dramatically during the financial crisis. I was probably like a 50D, 99I, pretty low S&C. And by the end of the financial crisis, my D was a 99. And it's, I really like to understand how the brain works and how personalities work. And most of the time when you have a significant shift in your personality, it's typically when you're younger, and it's typically based to some traumatic event. And for those of us who lived through the financial crisis in real estate, it was kind of like, do I still want to be a market participant or not? And that's like that was my best part of my career. I went from a solo agent to the #1 team in the world for the #1 company in the world at the time. So like my neurons were formed in chaos is one way of thinking about it. And, the complexity of what we were dealing with, like banks would disappear, right? Like IndyMac went away over a weekend, and I had 58 listings with IndyMac, and the federal government through the FDIC called and told me they were taking all my business away. And then I got on a plane and showed up to their office and said, no, you're not. And then they awarded me 3 states because I was so convincing. But it was those moments that kind of showed me that most of the time in life, all you got to do is show up and say, I'm here, and just make decisions, right? Like my favorite Tony Soprano quote is, indecision is the worst decision. And most of the time in moments of confusion, people just want someone to lead. And being completely transparent and okay with saying, like, I'm not perfect. I'm not going to get it right. And that's perfectly cool. And if I get it wrong, just tell me and I'll take feedback and we'll adjust quickly. But the amount of people I see in business and in life just kind of paralysis by analysis is, that's where I think the problem arises. And in moments like this, where there's uncertainty and confusion and kind of not sure where to move forward, all that gets amplified. So I do think I'm a wartime general, and I think it's because I became a business person through a chaotic moment, and so that's how my brain got wired. But the exciting advantage I see for that is it's statistically it's like 7 or 8 times easier to become a millionaire or a business to thrive during chaos, right? Like when rates are 2.85 and anyone and everyone can fog a mirror and do a deal, the level of effort, the level of professionalism isn't necessary like it is now, right? And with the shift in NAR, I think we're really, really going into a skills-based, professional-based business, which will hopefully level up everybody, right? So, there's a good portion of agents who were stuck on the buy side of the transaction because they didn't have the confidence and to have the ask, right? I think the agents that stay on buy side and don't go into the listing appointment, it's not skills based or knowledge based. They're super capable. It's walking in there and say, you are going to pay me X and I'm going to deliver Y, and I'm better than the 3 other people you're interviewing. And that takes a level of self-confidence and competence in articulating how you're going to do that. And so the folks who are going to get it are going to get it, and the ones that aren't. Because I believe now every buyer's agent is a listing agent, right? You have to show up to a competitive situation. You have to articulate your value with a presentation. You have to ask for compensation. And I'm witnessing at scale kind of a tale of two cities. There's folks in the camp that say, all right, I didn't ask for this, but I still want to sell homes. So this is the entrance fee to be a market participant. And then there are the folks who literally bring up, there's like, well, NAR dropped the ball and this isn't fair and we didn't do anything wrong. I'm like, I agree with you, but that doesn't change the fact that the rules of engagement are different. And if you want to minimize liability for yourself and your consumers and guide them through a very confusing, expensive, highly emotional transaction, these are the new rules to play with. And so here we are, but as kind of confusing and troubling everything has been for a couple months, going back to March, I actually think this is going there. In any conflict or confusion, there are winners and losers, and I firmly believe we're going to be a disproportionate net winner of what comes out of this.
Well said.
Yep, and it reminds me of a little saying I always love is like, it's who you have to become. Like that's what, in order to be successful, it's who do you have to become. And right now I see it in conversations every day I'm having with people. People are deciding I'm not willing to do that, or I'm willing to do that. And so I'm curious, Leo, what I mean, I know this would be you may not even want to answer the question. It might be fine too, I guess. But, do we think, what is the range of potential agents getting out of the business in your mind that you think that we may
First of all, why I think I've had so many invitations to talk on media, and I'm talking about industry as well as consumer facing, because I'm probably the only CEO in the space right now who's willing to have these conversations that most people are either shying away from liability, or they're just not comfortable talking about them. So I just said this to a reporter right before this call. I think we're going to have a disproportionately higher than normal seasonal attrition. And so statistically speaking, because you guys know I'm a nerd and I love numbers, statistically any month it's between 3.5% to 5% of every realtor in America gets out of the business, right? 3.5%, 5% attrition. And so it probably even closer to 4 to 5%. So whatever the national statistical average year over year is for said month, I think we're going to be above that. By how much? Not too worried about it because of the next part of the sentence, which is that real estate is still an inspirational, aspirational business. I've started and scaled companies where I've raised in excess of $48 million of venture capital. And I will still tell anybody who is entrepreneurial and aspirational that the barrier of entry to the potential income you can make in residential real estate is probably still the best entrepreneurial opportunity in this country, right? It's created, pathways for folks to change kind of the stars of their family. And I still think it is. So, when we all got into the business, it was only old people, right? Jay and I were always the youngest kids in the room.
Yeah.
But thanks to the homie Ryan Serhant and other people who've made it cool, and I'm not being facetious, there is a whole bunch of folks who are going to get their license next month and in January and in March and in April. So I don't spend too much time thinking about it, Jay. It's going to be a seasonal adjustment.
Right.
I'm calling it the messy middle till we get to the other side. And people ask me how long. That's the part I don't know.
Right.
It could be 6 months. It could be 12 months. It could be 18 months. It's definitely more than 90 days, right? Because the infrequency of transactions. So there's going to be an agent out there in January who's like, what are we talking about? What
right.
Right. But the appeal of our industry is still going to remain strong. Right. And the funny part that I've said a couple times is in next summer, when you guys are onboarding new agents to your teams and they hear how we used to do it,
they're going to laugh.
they're going to be like, dude, you put people in your car and didn't know if you were going to get paid. Like, that's just crazy. Like,
Insane.
wait a second. You used to let the listing agent decide how much you were going to earn. I mean, it's kind of like, if you think about a Pulte, townhome community where they're like identical, literally the listing agent got to decide if you made 2, 2.25, 2.5, 3, 1, 1.5, 4, like,
yeah.
You as the professional rendering the services were not even participating in the conversation. So again, I've been quite loud that I think the attorneys were a bunch of ambulance chasers who were just trying to get paid and actually don't care about the consumer. No. So I'm actually very clear about that. But, a byproduct of this is now agents can actually decide what they're worth and what their time is worth. I do believe, and I just said this to the interviewer, that we're now going to deal with new participants on the buy side that we're not familiar with. And let me explain it. On the seller side, the entire time all 4 of us have been licensed, you've always had to compete with for sale by owners, literally someone who chose to not hire somebody. And every year, 5 to 13, 14% of the country are for sale by owners. And that's perfectly okay. That's their choice. They can do whatever they want. There's always been a flat fee brokerage in the markets I sold houses, like literally, from $4.99 to $9.99 to whatever, just a flat fee model. There was always a menu of service companies where it's like, hey, I'll do this for that, I'll do this for that, and it's a la carte. And there was always percentage-based companies ranging from little to a lot, right? So with the percentages, there was a wide range, probably comparable to the other fee structures. But because of the cooperation and compensation in the MLS, the buy side was pretty uniform in the sense that it was just offered through the MLS. I'm not speaking to the percentages, but just statistically, it was a market participant rule. Now we have, because I think where most agents freak out and they go into like those dark places and the conversations is they go into like a blank slate and they're like, I don't know what to expect. And they start like, especially on the internet, drive each other crazy. Mm-hmm. When people say, what's going to happen? I said, it's going to look just like sellers. They're like, well, what do you mean? I said, 5 to 15% of buyers will be FSBO buyers. And I'm calling them FSBO buyers to make the mental anchor so you can compare it. Because if I say unrepresented buyer, you start thinking about agency and you're like, you need representation in buyer groups. Like 5 to 15%, somewhere in there are going to say, I don't want anyone to represent me. I'm going to walk into open houses by myself. And then I'm going to tell the listing agent seller, I'm unrepresented. That is a new category of consumers we're not used to. On the buy side, we're completely used to it on the seller side, right? Every agent does 1 or 2 FSBO buy-side representations per year. They send the commission agreement prior to showing it, so they're protected and procuring calls and all that stuff. We've been doing it for decades. So that is a new party to contend with. And the second is there's going to be startups that are flat fee, who are going to offer a flat fee service. Guess what? You guys have been competing against that your entire lives. Right? Hell, you might offer it as part of your offering as a menu of services for a really sophisticated buyer who needs less handholding than maybe a first-time home buyer who needs a lot of handholding. At the end of the day, 4 to 5 million American families need to move next year, and they need a professional to hold their hand. And this messy middle, in my opinion, will last until the consumer and the agents are fully educated, right? So I think that a lot of headlines will probably create a lot of curiosity and testing from the consumers. So I don't need any representation because CNN said so. And then they're going to go out and probably not be able to execute because it's a full-time job and it's actually really hard. A percentage of them absolutely will, and they can do what they want. I think a larger percentage that mirrors the seller behavior will say, you know what, I want to pay a professional to hold my hand. And I'm saying it on record all over the place. I think it's going to look equal to or greater than seller behavior, right? Because to sell a home, you're in one place and stuff's coming to you versus when you're buying, try scheduling 10 showings in a week, right? There's just so much complexity that, again, I wish would have been argued better during the plaintiff's trial, but it wasn't. And here we are. And, when folks get really emotional with me and I say, look, I hear you, but at the end of the day, you have a simple question. Do you still want to represent families in buying or selling homes? If the answer is yes, this is the new world. Like, we didn't come up with it, but we're choosing a path forward to keep ourselves and the client's best interest in mind, and best interest in the sense, let's not create more liability and an opportunity for more litigation. So as much transparency, like my kind of approach is I've made bold decisions for us as a company and the industry in general is like, what's the least, problematic way of doing it? What's the most transparency that we can have? Where are we putting the consumer's process first? And let's just kind of default to that, and then we should be able to be okay.
So I have an observation because actually today's September 17th. It's 1 month from the deadline that we needed to follow, August 17th. And here's my observation: we're 30 days in. We're actually a little more than 30 days in, but from that date, and I'm actually pleasantly surprised at. We thought this was going to be a shit show and that, people were going to be going nuts and crazy and falling out. I mean, it's actually a lot smoother than what I thought initially. What I observed, and I talked to dozens and dozens and dozens of agents on the list and buy side, and this is specifically up here in Northeast Ohio, Cleveland. And I have to admit, agents up here just do things a little differently. Won't get into all that, but they just do. And for the first 2 weeks, it seemed as smooth as flat water on a lake. It was just great. After that, it seemed like they started running into, and this is my question for you. There's two, I believe our biggest challenge right now is from the broker level, the leadership level down, because there's two ways that people are doing business right now. There's the Leo Pareja EXP Realty that led the way, that everyone thought we were nuts when we announced we weren't doing broker to broker compensation anymore, and that it's going to come from the seller or the buyers themselves to pay that buyer's agent. But there's a large company that has a large market share, especially up here in Northeast Ohio, that is advertising their commissions on their public website for every listing. And we have agents calling, and I would say that it's probably not 100%, but it's about, from my observation, about 60 to 75% of agents are still calling and saying, "Hey, how much are you offering the buyer's agent?" And the nice thing that I have seen is like on some of the bigger Facebook pages, like Lab Coat Agents and stuff like this, I see agents taking screenshots of people asking that question, and then a very professional and well-written, articulated response back saying, "Here's why we're not telling you what the sellers are willing to offer, because it gives their position away. Just write it in and let's negotiate." And I think it's just, I don't know that it's hard for people to understand, because we got our arms around it pretty quickly. But when you have brokers that are preaching the other direction, and now we have an industry that instead of sort of doing or practicing this the same way, we have two separate practices. I'm not saying one's illegal or anything like that. I believe that we are taking the conservative, solid, correct way. That's just my humble opinion. Thank you, Leo. But the other, we're not talking about a few agents. We're talking about large companies, and it's coming from top down. How do you see us maybe in the next 6 to 9 months bringing everyone together, so to speak, not in a collusions type of way, but I'm saying
no. Like again, this is a topic I talk a lot about. So first of all, like, how did we get here, right? So the settlement came out, and it's contradictory, right? One paragraph says don't do this, and the other paragraph says you can do this, but off the MLS. And that's where the argument has come up. California Association of Realtors, the single largest repository of agents in the United States, started to write forms to be compliant with paragraph 32 to allow broker to broker. The DOJ sent them a cease and desist and said, don't do that. So California said, okay, we're not going to do that. So what's interesting from where I sit, it's super state by state. So, if you talk to your friends in California, like we've been on calls, we're on text together, and like literally your friends go, what are you guys talking about? Right? Like there was one where you were giving me an update on that one specific broker, and our friends on the West Coast are like, I don't get it. Well, in California, they don't have the option. Like you can still do it, but the broker would have to create their own forms. But the state broker The state forms don't have it anymore. And what I've seen since we took that position, because we even did it before California did it, right? In the same blogs now, when people talk about our position, they're like, well, they just copied California. I'm like, well, timeline-wise, we did it first, but I don't care. I hope we all do it, right? Because it's, to your point, it clarifies it all. What I've seen happen is Austin Board of Realtors came out and took the exact same position we did. Kansas City, where the trial was had, has updated the forms to not have broker to broker as an option. St. Louis copied them as well. So part of the answer to your question is, I think we just saw where the puck was going and decided to go there. And I actually got questions a bunch, like, why did you do that? I was like, because we're a 50 state company. I don't have the optionality of saying, let's just watch, right? Because I saw that there were going to be things. Yes, we went one step further than the settlement. Mechanically, our agents can do anything the other agents can do. But what we are doing is forcing that conversation with the seller to say, look, this is our fee for what we're doing for you. If you would like to offer something else, we have a separate form. You can do it now. You can advertise it if you want. You don't have to. You can say, put it in the offer, and we can choose to negotiate. You don't have to offer anything. And by the way, I assume that they're going to ask for something, right? Our process was on purpose to make sure that the most important part of the litigation, which was that the seller didn't feel forced or coerced into something. They were not a market participant. That's where it was like a no-brainer for us. And the flip side of the coin is an agent's not allowed to receive a penny more that's in their buyer broker agreement. So to me, to advertise, let's just say I advertise X and I'm only earning less than X, I've already for sure given away part of the seller's equity, right? Which, by the way, if the seller's choosing to, and it's a buyer's market and you want to be competitive, that's a choice the seller gets to make. And my whole thing is, I want to make sure that there's ample conversation and explanation and everything else. What I think will most likely happen is more and more states will probably end up where we started, because that's what we've seen happen, right? It started with one, it's like 3 or 4 now. And different associations are doing it. I think at the end of the day, and this is what I preach and I teach, your fiduciary responsibility to a buyer is to show them everything they qualify for in the area they're looking for. Because the example I'll give you is, have you ever gotten a property for less than list? Have you ever asked for something that was not in the conveyables, like the hot tub or a pool table or anything else that is, not advertised? The answer is unequivocally yes, right? According to CRMLS data and Bright data over the last 6 months, 55% of every closing had concessions prior to the settlement, meaning somebody got for something that wasn't advertised, right? So your fiduciary responsibility, and if you like, and this is where I worry for the other companies, and I'm not shy about it. And I in that last 30 days have actually picked up the phone and called other CEOs of other large companies and said, are you aware of what's happening in the field? And in most cases, Al, they actually were mortified and said, thank you for letting me know. Like, we're getting through this together as an industry. So anything that's manual, I'm telling you, will probably go away, right? Just because humans are humans, right? Eventually, you'll just realize that it is what it is, right? And we now live in a different world where agents can actually get more than what's being offered, because that's what's agreed upon in their agreement. And it could also be the complete opposite, where it's less than what's being offered because that's what's in their agreement. So what I am imploring everybody to have is as much patience and grace as possible. Because again, if your broker is preaching something that's contrary to what we're teaching, that's confusing. It's, creates an opportunity for conflict. Everybody is, your job is to serve your seller and your buyer to the utmost availability. So never get in the way of the transaction. We're doing the best we can with imperfect information, as I believe it to be. By the way, this is the beginning of the litigation. I fully expect, and again, I'm just quoting what these attorneys have said. They said, we are watching. We are screenshotting your conversations and all these chats. And we're going to give you 6 to 12 months. And we already see people egregiously violating the spirit of what we negotiated. and we will come for someone. So my guess, Al, is if, again, I don't know which broker or what part of Ohio you're referencing, but in general, if there are folks that are outside of the bounds of the spirit of the agreement, because that's the part I think most people don't understand. NAR settled, and everyone who's an NAR member is now covered if you don't violate the agreement, right? So agreements are confusing, like lawyer legalese and lawyer jargon. I bet you most agents haven't read 190 pages of the settlement, are familiar with all the nuances of it. Where I worry is in the event an agent is saying, what are you paying? And then they cancel that showing if they don't like the number coming out of the agent. Because, by the way, that's actual steering, right? Like the crux of the litigation was accusing our industry of steering. And again, we have the MLS data that nobody sorted by compensation. Like Right MLS, CRMLS, the biggest MLS in the country, have the data that said, guys, we actually didn't do that. Like we have keystroke data and search history. Like no one ever did that. You said 4-bedroom, 3-bath, this zip code up to $350,000 or less. And you sent that and you showed that. I worry that some practices I'm seeing are actual steering, where folks are saying, if you don't pay me X, I'm not showing your listing. I'm advising you guys, don't even make that phone call. Is it for sale? Perfect. Write the offer with the compensation that is in your buyer representation agreement, which is what the settlement states. So, but even as I say that, I implore you guys to have as much patience and empathy for everybody as we're all trying to figure it out, and then do the best to represent your buyers and sellers in the most fiduciary way possible.
Yeah. I'm excited to see the new best practices that us creative agents are going to be coming up, like with regard to negotiating multiple offers in this new era. And I think that's one of the trickiest things that people are going to have to navigate. Let's segue into a fun conversation. Sounds like you're just having fun everywhere. You're on CNN, you're on C-SPAN, all over the national news in a good way. But recently have been having some conversations with CCP.
CCP has been the hot topic as of a couple of weeks ago. So
explain to our listeners what
so
the
clear
CCP
cooperation policy is an NAR national framework that requires market participation of inventory. So what it means is if you sign an exclusive listing agreement, you have to input it into the MLS. I think it's within 24 hours. And the only exclusion for that is private exclusives at the intra-office level. So there is another side of the debate where folks were being very loud about saying we should get rid of it altogether. And I took a very contrary position and said, listen, market participation is super important. And these are the reasons, by the way, I've told NAR and I've told media. The US way of doing business and the Canadian way of doing business, North American real estate, is by far the envy of the world. And I'll tell you why. First of all, it's a complete data set. It is accurate and it is liquid and perfect as data can come, right? Obviously there's always some breakdown, but like the fact that you can log into the MLS or a portal and it says active, you take for granted what active means. You take for granted that when you see 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, that actually means a room with a door and a closet and a windowsill that's 44 inches from the ground with a 60-foot egress that a full-grown adult can go through, right? When you see a list price, that's an advertised price that you can rely on, right? If you go to France where we operate, I was talking to a French agent when we were there over the summer that said she's got to go to 9 portals to figure out what's available, right? If we get rid of the participation rule that's required, companies, brokerages, especially ones with inventory, could actually hoard inventory only on their websites. And if ever choose to stick them in the MLS, and they would still want to be a member of the MLS and draw IDX data, but not contribute. So that's where I have a problem with it for a couple of reasons. One is, again, we take for granted what we don't understand what it's like not to have. We operate in 24 countries, so this is a very real subject to me. And I know what we pay for access to portals. It would actually make the cost of advertising a home dramatically more expensive, right? The cooperative marketplace is the MLS. It's no different than any other co-op in the history of this country where like farmers got together to buy seed at a cheaper discount. By cooperating and then sharing the data, we have a very, very affordable way to market information. If we don't have that, you literally have to pay for eyeballs on Google and portals. Like somebody yesterday was commenting that, Redfin and Zillow, I'm like, we get rid of this, they turn into advertising machines. And then we have to pay them per month, per listing and eyeballs, right? That's how it's done in the rest of the world. That's why Rupert Murdoch and Andy Florence are buying up portals all over the world. They print money because they charge exorbitant fees. We have the system where everybody agrees to participate because let's not forget, we're competitors. We're the fiercest of fiercest competitors. And so one is you lose that complete data set, and then companies start competing for inventory and access instead of service and value, right? The reality is it doesn't matter which jersey you're wearing, the access to the data is for every market participant. And I am competing on business model and value proposition, just like I talked about, right? Whether I decide to go flat fee, menu of service, or percentage on either side. But if all of a sudden the inventory is controlled by a gatekeeper, what does that do to negotiating power to the consumer, right? What does that do to level of service? Like, and again, we don't have to go that far, and I'll leave names out for the guilty and innocent. Like commercial real estate, you guys have tried to buy some commercial buildings before. Like, has the listing agent not called you back when they realized you wanted a fee, right? It's a different beast. And this is people's homes. I think the people who would get most hurt by silos of inventory are the people who need the most access to representation. It's first-time home buyers. It's low to moderate income buyers. Like, let's just take your sub-market. If people can control inventory and keep it, what stops them from only selling it to investors so that investors only see it, right? Versus first-time home buyers, people that need to get on that economic rung.
Like we're in Puerto Rico. We want to talk about Wild Wild West. Yeah. Jake can tell you a few stories about how hard it is to shop and know what's out there. That's just one example, but I'm sure. It
doesn't breed quality traits out of real estate agents either.
We're so spoiled that no one knows because we're in this little box and we don't know how good we have it. But
I just sold my parents.
You can share, right?
I just sold my parents' house in Belize. It took me 4 years. 5 different agents.
Oh my gosh.
And by the way, I know how to sell houses, right? Like I'm not some random consumer trying to figure this out. I had to hope that the right keystrokes went into Google and landed on that agent's WordPress website, right? And oh, by the way, at the end of the day, I paid 10%, right? So like, again, things that should have probably been argued at the NAR settlement was, out of the G7, the US is the second cheapest country to sell homes in, right? Countries that don't have cooperative compensation and don't have MLSs are still more expensive to sell homes than it is here, right? Like this is the most visceral one for me. Like we take for granted that we have a liquid real estate market. And like people always say real estate's not liquid. The hell it isn't. In every city in America right now, you can list a home and there is a appropriate discount based on supply that if I list that house on a Friday, in each market that you own stuff in, it could be 5%, it could be 10%, it could be 20%. It depends on the amount of inventory and everything else, right? Right now, it's probably a 5% discount, right? And you'll get 20 offers, right? There is a number discount. And one of those offers will be cash close in 10 days. Am I wrong? Like if you give it the appropriate discount. Guys, like if I said that to the agent in Belize, I was like, what's it worth? He's like, $249. I was like, list it for $199. He's like, it's not going to make a difference. It's still going to take 6 months. I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm a motivated seller. I'm done with that property. My parents live here. I want them near the grandkids. What do you mean? They're like, it doesn't change anything. Like, hopefully someone searches it and it gets into an index and, 6 months from now, we get a couple of showings. I'm like, wow.
Yeah. Leo, is it fair to say that in Belize and some of these other places that you don't have 6 iBuyers, institutional buyers ready with cash to just scoop up at full price, and they're not doing that. Where are they? It's concentrated here in the U.S. Am I wrong?
100%.
Yeah. So there you go.
And the reason there's institutional capital in residential real estate is because it's a liquid, timely, accurate, like just something like, how do you pull comps? How do you pull comps without a complete data set that's accurate and timely, right? So again, I am quite passionate. You can tell in my voice where it's like, guys, this is, and where I get really mad is I'm seeing other leaders advocate for it for selfish reasons, right? I said this on stage at Riz Media, and I said it to NAR, and I'll say it right here is, FYI, we are the biggest brokerage in the United States. We would be the biggest net beneficiary. We would be the net winner of this rule change if we're being pure capitalists. But I've strongly gone the other way because it's not right for the consumer. And at the end of the day, I'm in the business of taking care of consumers via giving you guys the best tools in the planet to serve them in what's a very trustful, necessary hand-holding, high level of relationship transaction, because it's full of, friction, right? Like title, mortgage, inspections, cracking a foundation. There's all kinds of stuff that can go wrong. And I think the last thing we need to do is having to go to different pockets of the world to maybe hopefully find some secret inventory. That's not good for anybody.
Yeah. It just has to be, the definition is now being rewritten.
Well, so this is what I said to several, folks who've asked me about it. Do I love CCP in its perfect form? No. Most things that were created by a committee can be improved. But if you're giving me the A, CCP, B, destroy it, I'm going to go with let's keep it. But if you give me, let's keep it and change these 5 things, I'm open to any and all suggestions. By the way, someone said, you fix it. I'm like, I have other fish to fry right now, but like, I'm open to a multiple of suggestions, maybe a longer period of time for pre-marketing while you're getting photos and that kind of stuff. I've even heard a debate of open listings going there versus exclusive listings going the other place. I'm open to anything, but I am for a complete marketplace that gives access to all the market participants on the same rules of engagement.
Yeah. Well, we need you. All the agents in the US need you, because if without the Leo Parejas fighting for the, everything that we've been talking about in the last 10 minutes, you are going to have those brokers who are going to be advocating to just put themselves in a better position to win. Not about the consumer, not about their agents even. And the thing is there's trust built between a broker and their agent. There's trust built between the agent and the consumer. No matter where they stand on the issue, whether it's an EXP agent talking to them or it's the other, and that's wherein lies where I believe there's going to be a lot of lawsuits. There's going to be people thinking, you know what? I don't think I just got the best advice right now.
I mean, there's historic, without naming names, but in Silicon Valley, there was a company who was very well known for it, and they got sued a bunch of times for it, and then it was acquired. So, we have the receipts that this is like, what's in the best interest for the seller is to have as many eyeballs see it in as many places as possible to sell the home for the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time. Right? That's the fiduciary responsibility. And then as an agent on the buy side is to get them access to everything. Back to the beginning of the conversation, where I'm like, don't ask what they're offering. It doesn't matter, right? You have a contract with your consumer, which, by the way, I still believe disproportionately will be covered by the seller through the negotiation process. And I'm not shy to say that either, right? When we came out with our policy, people said, Leo doesn't want to work with buyers. I said, I never said that. I never said that once. I just said the mechanism of broker to broker that is forbidden on the MLS. Let's not confuse anybody. Let's just do seller to broker, where the seller gets to be a negotiating party and a market participant in the transaction. And that's our interpretation of how to best navigate the settlement. And so all the decisions I'm making, whether it's broker to broker, to the forms we created, to my stance on CCP, is what is the best possible thing for the consumer? If we take that stand, I think we will get a disproportionate share of the business, because there will be a happy, satisfied consumer who will then tell other people that we took the best approach possible.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, any last thoughts, Jay, John? We really appreciate you, Leo. We can't wait. We're less than 48 hours away from welcoming you into the land, as we call it here in Cleveland, Ohio. Any closing thoughts, John?
No, I'm looking forward to it. I've got, a string of questions to pull out of Leo in a couple days. Obviously, we kick off tomorrow. We are sold out, which is really cool to be able to say we are, beyond capacity, and kind of cool that we've been able to, the last minute put together a live stream option. So, anybody listening in, and for the price, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's a no-brainer. And you're wanting to kind of tune in, to all four of us and a handful of others, agent2ceo.live. Get the live stream, you'll get the recordings, you'll get all the ridiculous stuff that we always promise that pops up as we're kind of rolling through all the events that we do. And I'm looking forward to it. I know it's going to be timely. I think, and Leo, we talked about this, is that it's a direct reflection, being able to sell out. We did the event 2 years ago. Going into the last week, we had maybe 20 tickets sold. We sold out and have sold live stream. I don't even know what the count is at now. And to me, it's just it's a clear indication that the agents want to know how to navigate and be, really head of company, and to what it means to run a business in the new environment moving forward. So looking forward to the next couple of days.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to see you guys in person in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Appreciate you, brother.
All right.
All right. We'll wrap it up. We'll see you in Cleveland. We'll see you, our audience, at the top.
Or from the top.
See you guys later.